right, so where do we go from here? We spent all this time. We had to work our way through COVID. We had to come out of COVID. We had to just literally, it felt like we just crept and crawled along till we finished everything off. And I thought, what better fitting way on a 100-degree day than to go back outside and do this and finish it up. So where do we go from here? Because we don't see a tunnel. And it makes no sense because we have the stories of, oh, this is what happened. And there's a tunnel and it goes down to a spiral staircase and it goes down in the ground. Well, it's not a spiral, it's a corkscrew. And the steps are like this and it's an alluvial. No, it's in granite and it goes to a cave. And we push all our research. We don't have any, beyond 30, 40 years, we don't have any definitive names, dates. So then I start to wonder, was this some guy was going out, finds an adit in a north-south trending canyon, and up above he finds an indentation, looks like it was a filled-in pit. And he starts looking around and go, well, I'm in the Superstitions. I wonder if I found the Lost Dutchman Mine. And he starts digging around and all, and you can play into it because when Julia Thomas and Reinhard Pertrash make their first trip into the mountains and Jim Bark runs into them, they're just north of that area, up by Hog Canyon. So it actually fits that someone could have mistaken it. But then why does it have this whole story of like they dug it out and all this stuff and then, oh, there's a tunnel in there. But then I have to realize there's the other story of the Pima saying the way Walt's got his gold is there was this place he went down, and he went down this tunnel into this cave system, and he traded salt to the people underground for gold. And while we know that's absolute bullshit, what if there was something about that there's some truth? But then we don't find any trace of gold. We found nothing. We couldn't sample anything. There was nothing. It's all from the volcanic activity. There's no granite we could even think there would be anything that Walt's described. But the appearance and misperception by other people, because there's been 100 people for 100 years chasing the wrong clues, the wrong idea. So is that what we have, is just a bunch of stories, apocryphal stories just attached to this whole thing? And that's where I start to wonder. And then I have to back out and say, well, but why would some of these people say these things? I mean, every story I get is a little different. And I've been down there and I saw what I saw. And what I saw was there's no tunnel. Then everybody's now trying to tell me, and this is almost like a stone map thing, well, maybe it's filled in and it's below you now. Well, that makes very little sense either, because we've been out there so many times, we know what it looks like. So where do we go from here? Fish Creek Hill's still down. We can't finish what we started there and working in that area. Such a workaround, it's like an incredible task. And am I ready just to put the fork in things? I don't know. I'm on that point where I just feel like it's one more thing. And then I realize we're playing into that whole reality television thing of where I know this isn't season 10 and we're just keep acting like we're going to get it. It's not like, oh, we found a little gold in the dirt. Well, gold in the water, gold in the dirt, a trace. Guess what? You can find that just about anywhere in Arizona. So we're not playing some game here. It's just, yeah. Am I good enough with saying I'm done with this and there's some other things I want to move on? Because there are other things. Because over this time period, you've seen us moving around. I mean, it was a pretty good run because there was a couple dozen silver dollars.
They're all from the 1890s.
And we got that. So what's this, a quarter? That's what I found first, this.
What year is that?
1898.
I think it was 1883.
We kind of like ended up opening up the whole thing of the Holy Stones are complete bullshit. But at the same time, the Burns treasure story, which old man Burns didn't have a pot to piss in. And then we're finding, but is this Bob Ward? But he didn't, you know, it just keeps opening another little door for us to go, what the hell? And being a skeptic, being so analytical as I am, it drives me crazy. Because I want to know the answer. I want to know, is there more out there? And I'm not going to chase it till I go broke, but I want to know, what's the reason for some of these things? Or is there some malicious bit of fate that's just coaxing us along? Like, a little more. Just keep you guys around a little bit more. So where are we now? Where do we go from here? So we get to this point, and you know, the day we made it down the spiral, not too bad. There's always a bit of drama. And I called Frank as soon as we were out. Hey, we're okay. We're up above ground. We're on our way out. Everything's good. And kind of we had the discussion that day. But then Frank sees the video. And then I get the third degree. Because I'm going to die in there. What were you thinking? You wouldn't have went if I wouldn't have went. Funny thing is, while I have this conversation with Frank and he's telling me how I wouldn't have been able to go down there if he was there, he would have stopped me. Trevor's laughing and shaking his head behind me as Frank's telling me this, because Trevor realized, nah, that was that point where I was going and it didn't matter who was there. It was just, you were just going to be a bystander no matter what. Because like you, I get to that point where I'm just sick of it. I want to know. I want to see something. Everyone that goes out there comes away and there's not a single photograph. There's nothing there. So how much do we have to do still before we can put the fork in it? Is there a little something more? Or is there someone else going to finally come up with some proof that brings us back out and we say, okay, you know what? That was part A. Now we're on part B. So far, we got nothing. So what we've been through from start to finish, we cataloged everything we could. We weren't finding that much evidence. I mean, people leave stuff behind. We should have found more. For all the activity that supposedly happened there over 100 years, there should have been so much more. And I just think someone needs to give me something, a photograph, something that shows me, okay, this is this. There were people that said they'd been down there and they basically were just BSing us. They posted it, they went on the internet, yeah, we've been down there and all this stuff, and here's the staircase, and they were in the DeCook mine, which I knew very well. So they must have hung a lantern or done something. They could have been stringing lights for all we know along here. So I'm kind of working my way up. Some of the timbering and stuff that's left. You can see where this is. They worked back in here out. So I don't see any critters in here. So and then we're working our way back up. And that's and obviously called the staircase because they made stairs, cut stairs into this, and you can see there's kind of a cement here. So, and I hated all that because the idea is to go, if you're doing this sort of thing, is to kind of be honest and upfront and truthful. And we've tried to kind of meticulously step by step, and there's people I know have been out there, and I think they even surprised them and threw them off when they realized, wow, you really went down. But I thought it made sense for everyone, because if you go down and you show everybody there's nothing there, or you show everybody there's something here, everybody can sit back and do it. It's safer for the general population. So, and I tried to imply that to Frank, is like, you know what? This keeps people from getting killed, because I know what I'm doing. I've done this. Oh, no, you can't do that. No, I know what I'm doing, and guess what? Here I am still talking about it. So again, where do we go now? So is it one more attempt? Is it enough? You know, do we take a piece of rebar and we check? I think it's so unstable and it's collapsing in a way. that I don't think it's a great idea to go down there and poke around or dig around right now. I think the whole thing, but it makes no sense. If the thing's collapsing, it should be filling in. And instead, when I got down there, it was more open than it was the last trip I'd made. So I was fully expecting to find some tunnel or opening where all this stuff was pushing down through and going back into, but that wasn't there. So everything about it continues to be confusing and not make a lot of sense. So I keep saying that thing is, where do you go now? Because I don't think anyone watching this feels like, well, that's done, because there's still unanswered questions. If you've been watching this all the way through, we've done so much that it doesn't make sense of where we're at now. Of like, there's so many unanswered questions, and I hate unanswered questions. I hate when something's kind of just hanging out there and I'm looking at it and I'm going, it doesn't make sense. I want it to make some sort of sense. I want it to kind of like complete itself. There has to be some reason these stories came up. I talk to people and everybody has that different version of the story. Well, there has to be something that reconciles. Why is there a story from people digging in there from the 20s and 30s? Why does Andy Sinbad have the stories from the 60s, 70s? But then Paul Zellner says Andy ran into the area and Paul took it over, and Paul's in there and no one had done anything until 1980. Everybody's story is different. Everybody's like they want to be the first guy there, and maybe that's part of it, but it still makes no sense. And then when I looked at the drawings, people's sketches and drawings, they're in different parts of these tunnels and tunnel systems, and I'm like, well, how do you know if you've never got by there? The sand is there. Someone dug that sand out of somewhere around there, and that seems to be where it came out of. So why would you bring the sand out, sift through all of it, take and separate the rocks over here, take the sand all the way over there and dump it? None of it makes sense. The sand had to come out mainly pure and clean like it did, and they just dumped it over to that side. So everything's separated in such a way that I have to believe that somewhere there was a deposit that was just almost clean sand like they say. But there's no tunnel, there's no staircase that I can find. No pictures, no video. How many people? It's like, well, I got some pictures. Well, where are they? Oh, they're in a shoebox in the garage. Well, could you find them for me? Sure. Year or two later, nothing. Oh, so-and-so has some pictures. I'll call him. Year or two later, nothing. Everyone has their story, but I'm not calling anyone a liar. I'm just saying, okay, one picture. Give me the negatives. Give me something. So all of us can sit back and say, there is something to this. There's an archaeologist, supposedly was on the site working there. I got the name, we call. The person won't call us back. Well, what's he afraid of? Or is he just doesn't understand what we're even asking him because he never really was there? He's going, who are these guys that are calling me about something in the superstitions? I have no clue what they're talking about because someone just drew their name out of a hat. It kind of gets more and more puzzling. There's no gold in the area. It can't be a gold mine. Why would you dig the pit? If it was ceremonial or done for some other purpose, fine. It doesn't seem to have any treasure, because I would think if there was treasure, there was any type of story attaching that to treasure, there would be people out here there today digging in that ground, trying to keep people out to do that. We've been out there dozens of times. No one's ever there. We've seen sign of people been there, but there's no sign of anything really happening, and there's never anyone there. There's no campfire, there's no trash. They're going out like they're looking over the edge, and then they're leaving. That's what we're seeing. So if it's a treasure cache, you would expect more of it, so they can't even believe that themselves. So there's no possible way, in my opinion, that I feel this thing's 1,000 years old. I don't see a tunnel, a spiral staircase, but the Aztec Mayan thing of this thing being and people telling me, I keep looking at it in the deterioration over the last couple of seasons of rain. We've been looking at this really under the microscope for 5 or 6 years. And these last rains really changed the face of it and changed the parameter and how it looks and everything. The change in it, just with one, well, in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, we had far more severe rainstorms than we had this last season. That was back in the days before the drought. So I keep looking at it as, well, if this did that much damage in a year, year and a half, wasn't there any damage for 30, 40 years unless it was much fresher, and what it's done is it's destabilized and now the erosion's taking it out. So I come to believe the pit isn't as old as people think it is, which doesn't make sense, because that means everybody that's told us a story about when they first dug out the pit and this and that and all that is just utterly full of crap. And that's disappointing. And I know those people, if they watch these videos, and some of them do, they're going to sit there and they're going to kind of give me the dirty stink eye when they get around me the next time. But I asked for pictures. I said, sit down, talk to me, explain this to me. Tell me why I'm having the problem with this. And if nobody's reaching out to me, if no one's explaining it to me, I'm not saying prove it to me. I'm saying I have this conflict. There's this problem. And if you're just stepping back and like don't have anything to say, we know basically the Mayan calendar stone's not a Mayan calendar stone, and it didn't come from the superstition. So the attachment of it to the story was utter crap. There's people that said, oh yeah, I went down in there. Well, how far did you make it? And then once I got to the bottom, the roots of it, believe it or not, they said, well, I kind of looked down in. I got a lot of stories from a lot of people who said, well, I looked down in there and saw all the cholla and stuff, and I didn't go any further. I took it as they were kind of pushing me, like they got down in and looked down the tunnel. But now I'm realizing, no, I think they got there, looked down in, and never made it past the edge of that top. And it's, again, when I pointed out, you're seeing some pictures. You got to see camera drops. You got to see me climbing down in there. I didn't get to spend a ton of time. It was unstable as hell, and I understand why other people aren't going in there. But at the same time, I'm the only one that did this. I'm the only one that took shots, did any film footage down there that you see down in there. How is this possible that all these people and all this work's done and they talk about this, and there's not one other piece of photographic evidence or nothing over the last 40, 50 years that anybody else was down in there? So I think Trevor and Frank have to sit back and agree. Did someone dig that out and then everybody's been just looking down in there? There was one group that was in there, and I saw everything in the write-ups and everything they did, and they had pictures, and they were all from up top. They talked time and time again about going in there and all this work they were doing and this whole thing. And I'm sorry, there's not a single photograph or anything they ever sent me or gave me that was beyond 2 inches beyond the top of the ridge of that pit. So I'm the one that went down in there. And then they'll say what they want to say, but hey, I was down in there. I showed everybody I went down in there. So do I get a group of people I can trust? People that I feel confident in? And do we come out and we document one last time? Do I bring my climbing harnesses and my climbing ropes? Do I bring my descender? Do I do all that? And you got to remember, this last time we were pulling a lot of gear between two of us. That gear's heavy. The climbing rope I would bring out there, that's got to weigh 30, 40 pounds. And you're going to have to bring the harness and everything else. So the gear on top of the camera gear and water and everything else available. And everybody seems to forget that, you know, and then they're like, well, we'll just fly a drone in there. Well, our cameras quit working. I don't see anything. Let's fucking play. We have problems with the cameras, audio, and everything else. That's what I need to do, is get about $1,000 drone and drop it down in there so we get nothing. Or bang it off a wall and then look at the drone sitting down there with my pack of cigarettes. Because that would be fascinating. Someone might actually go down if there's a drone and a pack of cigarettes, because I could just throw the controller for the drone down and let someone have a prize, you know? But that's the thing, is it takes equipment and takes a number of things, and it takes people that you can have the confidence in. And it's just, I'm sorry when people say, oh, well, I'll be there. Just let me know when you're going. We can go. I'll be there. It's different. Trevor, Frank, there's people I'll trust in those given situations. Randy Wright will tell you straight out, there was guys we trusted and we went in the mountains with, and we trusted each other. But it's a little different. And you get to know people and you kind of get that feel for them, because you know you're in good shape, you're in good hands, in a good situation. Randy and I took care of each other, and for years we were in the mountains and everything was good. Frank is there, and he's got his support, and he's got other traits, but I trust Frank, and I trust Frank's judgment. I also know that Frank is as curious as I am. And another thing that a lot of people don't get is we're out there, there's not a lot of talking. A lot of times it's very quiet. Randy and I have talked about days we went in the mountains and didn't really say much to each other the whole time. Frank and I, a lot of times we're just doing stuff and we meet up, we talk, we kind of discuss it. When we're in the truck, we're talking, but once we get outside the truck, it gets very quiet and we kind of go our separate ways. It's very much like the times I had with Randy, because you want to process, get together, process this material, whatever you got together, then go back at it, and you do it like that. You stay out of each other's way, and then you bounce ideas off each other. It's worked really well with Randy Wright. It's worked really well with Frank. It works well with certain people. But you don't develop that relationship just meeting someone, or someone says, well, I'll participate. You know, I'm good. I'm handy. I can hike. And then you get out there and then you find, you know, okay, things aren't quite just the way, and that person doesn't quite understand. And I know we're putting up videos and we try to make it entertaining and we try to make it storyline and we try to make it content-wise. But then you get there in it and you find out it's much more direct of like, you know, you got a little of it on what we did at the spiral, but it's when someone's there, it's not a democratic consensus and so forth. I get there, I kind of say, okay, this is what I want to do today. Is this, everybody agree? Okay, and then I just go from there. And we bark at each other and we tell each other what we want to do when we have to do stuff. So when there's a focal moment, it's not a time to say, well, you know what I think we should do, or, you know, maybe I should be the one. No, there's just no ands, ifs, or buts, and we don't need to have that discussion. So it's hard to bring other people into a situation. It was difficult with Deleel and Magnuson, and it took weeks for us to kind of be fine with them. And Deleel and Magnuson would tell you that straight out. You can see the personality difference as time went on, because it was really rough. Because you don't know that guy. You don't really know him that well, and you got to put him in that situation and see what happens. And you don't know where their tolerance is. You don't know what they will do or what they're capable of. So it's never a diss on someone. It's a difficult thing to approach on. I'm 59 years old. I've been in and out of those mountains and done some dumb ass shit. And I'm still here. And one of the reasons I am, because it's my way. I do it my way, and that's the way it's done. And that makes sense to me because I'm here today still talking. And there are people who haven't been. Frank and I just had a recent discussion, and I said, people who are unprepared or go in there with the wrong idea, the wrong view, without the right equipment, guess what? Sometimes things break down on you, but guess what? I'm talking Adolf Ruth, Walter Gassler, these older guys that just don't go in with the right people and don't have the knowledge of the mountains they should and go in the wrong time of the year. And guess what? I'm here still talking, and they're not anymore. Well, they wouldn't be because they'd be 100 and some odd years old. But you get my drift. So it's never me pushing back on people. I know people want to help. People want to be part of something. But this is my way of doing something and sharing with people, telling a story. There's a lot of people that could never do any of this. So it's sharing that. But it's also my way of reaching out to people, bringing them in, bringing you in as close. So you don't need to see 4.5 hours of camera drops. You don't need to see the 8.5 hours of footage that we filmed that day, because a lot of it you would just fall asleep through and you'd say, did I miss something good? It's meant to be concise, tell a story in 30 to 40 minutes. Today's a little different because we're wrapping it all up. So we take you along on our trips, kind of show you what we're doing. We try to be upfront and as honest as possible. We do our research, and the people that are fans of stuff like Chasing Legends, we try to give it just, it's still opinionated, but it's trying to give you the best documented opinion we possibly can. And I know there's a lot of always, you know, it's more entertaining if you fake it. It's a lot more entertaining if you make stupid stuff up. But I didn't want to do that, because having dipped my toes in that and seeing some of that around me and so forth, and getting to recognize it more and more, and especially when I sat down with the camera crews that had worked on things like Paranormal State and Ghost Hunters International and Ghost Mine, and they told me all the stories of when they were filming, I just kind of felt so let down, because I was like, wow, I kind of thought there was maybe a possibility of something was real. And so it just disappointed. And I understood there's entertainment, there's advertising dollars on the table. Here, there's nothing. We're not sitting here trying to make a living off of this. We all make our living and do what we do otherwise. So this here is just for pure enjoyment. We're not running out and trying to give lectures at conventions. I'll do lectures at the museum and talk to some people about the superstitions, but I don't talk to people about Legend of the Superstition Mountains. I don't talk to people about my videos. I'm not out there pumping money into my YouTube. I'm not forcing t-shirts down your throat. Buy a shirt if you want to. I could care less. I think the shirts are kind of cool, and I made them quality, and I made everything so it was good stuff. I didn't want to do cheap stuff. I thought, well, let's do something nice. I've just always tried to keep this as real as possible, and this season what we tried to do is keep it really in there as real as possible, so people will sit back and, well, is this, well, you know what, again, like last episode, I kind of got a little, people were kind of giving me that feedback of kind of like, oh yeah, well, you know what, I was there and I did that, you know what, your ass wasn't. And time again, anyone that knows me and has been out there with me, I'm not going to step back. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm going to be the one going down. I'm going to be the one that takes that challenge. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Never have and never will. So it's not about me being badass. It's about the curiosity. It's wanting to say, okay, you say this, but I want to go down and see that for myself. It's not that I don't trust you. And that's where we leave ourselves this year is, we got in and we get to the 12th episode and the summer's come, it's 100 degrees and we're just kind of down for the summer, and I'm like, what do we do? There's other things to go, and it'd be fun to start something else, or do we want to do 12 episodes, or do we want to do something every month or so, just do an hour program about some specific story, something bigger? What do we want to do? And I'm like, yeah, but there's this thing over here that's nagging me. And it is nagging me because ever since that trip, and I was done with it on the drive home, I got home and then I told Frank, I was already planning kind of how do I want to approach this the next time. And that's crazy because I should be able to say I'm finished with it. But I love the fact that I feel like I'm so close to saying, okay, absolute bullshit. By the way, a show I love, Penn and Teller's bullshit. But that type of thing. I want to be able to sit there and say, you know what, don't risk your neck, don't do anything, just leave it alone, because guess what? It's not worth it. There's nothing to this. I don't think there's a treasure there. I don't think there's gold there. What is it? The archaeologists won't show. Everybody seems to back off the moment we got involved, and the deeper we pried into it, the more everybody backed away from us and disappeared. Suddenly everybody didn't have a campfire story anymore. Nobody, oh yeah, everybody just kind of got quiet. And it was like, okay, what does that mean? Because nobody came out of there with anything. Everybody kind of steered off. Yeah, we looked down in there. Yeah, that looks pretty sketchy. Yeah, well, it was sketchy. It was real sketchy. And so I can confirm that. There's nothing like a few rocks popping off your hard hat and telling you, well, that didn't work very well. But I got out. And now we're sitting here, and here again we're talking, and I'm looking at the camera and I'm saying, where do we go from here? And it's not a question to ask anybody else but myself, because in the end, wherever we go, it's going to be probably where I say, you know what, I'm not done. Load the truck up, put the gear together. Let's go give this one more big effort just to see what it is. I don't want to be an Oak Island type thing. I always thought this is something someone could film and get 2-3 hours out of, and let's find out what the truth is. And then this whole thing just ended up lasting forever for us. And I'm really surprised at that. But I never thought this would be a multi-season type of program running off of this thing. And yet here I am saying, well, do we want to continue? How many times can we take people to the edge of that pit, drop in the pit? And what do we got to do, you know? Is it me bringing a sleeping bag and sleeping down there? Making a little campfire, having some mac and cheese and saying, hey, you know what? You know, but there's nothing. And we've went through every little kind of weirdness possible investigating this. So we go through filming and we have every camera glitch. We get the camera fog on it. We can't figure out why it happened. It came and went as we went through that day. It wasn't humid. It wasn't this. Trevor never could basically figure out what caused it, but we went through it. Something. Then cameras not being in the pack that we're supposed to be in the pack. Then we get there and guess what? Other cameras don't work, but we get home and then they work perfectly fine. We got down, and the weird part was with the DeCook mine, as I went down, I took pictures, I filmed, and then we had to go back and we filmed and took pictures again, because the first time I had all the pictures before I went in. Everything I did in there did not show up on my phone, and then when I came out and continued to take pictures and film, all of it showed up. Why sometimes that happens, I have no idea. It could be user error, it could be a combination of things. So I always want to say is like, there can't be anything to any of this. But it's weird because sometimes there was that, we never got the spooky sensation. We never felt like, you know, Salvador was like, oh, you get there and you just know if it doesn't want you around and all this. Never felt anything. I don't think we ever felt paranoia. We never felt like people were watching us. We were just kind of kicking it. We had a good time. It was relaxing. It was a nice, quiet spot. But again, there was that loud, like someone dropped a boulder within probably 10, 15 feet of me and Trevor, and we're looking around and there's nothing there. There was odd things that happened, and we didn't quite understand the rhyme, reason, purpose for these things. So what does it all mean? And this is where we get kind of to a weird spot where if you're a stable-minded person and you kind of are like me and you say, you know, there's scientific reasoning, there's always a possible explanation for everything, this is where we just kind of say, okay, well, we'll see you again next season. Thanks for watching this season. But if you're one of those people that's just always like, that's weird, what's that about? Then we're going to go somewhere a little different. Because there was one problem we had that was associated kind of remotely with the stairway or the pit or whatever we want to call it. So I didn't find out about the pyramid stones till long after I brought it home. So I didn't put anything together because I didn't think this was anything but a cool looking rock. I thought, wow, it looks like somebody carved this rock, and it must have been from something above the ground over here, because I've never heard anything, any description, anything about this. There are supposed to be piles of rocks in the shape of pyramids, but nothing about these rocks. And supposedly in the sand, there's these rocks like pyramids, and they get two of them and they disappear. And I find one of them sitting there, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, you know? But before that, I didn't know nothing about it. I brought it home. I went up and said, well, what do I do with it? It's a cool rock. I put it with the rest of the rocks, because we find heart-shaped rocks, we find this rock. So I put them on a shelf. And I put that rock up on a shelf, and I didn't think anything of it. But shortly afterwards, I get a call one night. My neighbor says, hey, you need to go out back and check. Somebody's in your backyard. And I'm like, why? He said, my camera picked up someone, and they walked right up to your gates. And then they disappeared. So I go out, and I'm like with the flashlight. The dogs go out with me, and then they get to a certain point, and they stop. And I'm looking around. There's nothing out there. So I'm looking. So I go to my camera, and I look at my camera. And sure enough, there's some guy, and he's walking weird, you know, like, and I'm like, what's he doing, man? He's like doing some weird stuff. It's like, oh, great, got a crackhead walking up. And he walks up, and then he disappears, and my neighbor comes out and shows me his footage. And we're looking at the footage, and we're just like, I don't know, you know, because the way the cameras are set, we have a series of cameras where literally, if you come into the cameras, you got to go out through one of the cameras somewhere. So the idea was, you know, anybody in that general area has a problem, everybody's covering everyone else. So he's got two cameras that technically kind of start to cover my area, and I got cameras that partially cover his, and so anybody that comes through is going to trigger everything. So we kind of give up. I realize there's nobody in the yard. I don't know. I'm not. And then I go back to it and I start watching it. And when you watch it, it's strange because you can hear him walking in gravel, and then you hear it go silent. So I'm watching the camera afterwards, and I realize I can hear him in the gravel, and you can hear the audio of him walking. And I'm comparing the two and see where he stops, and he gets to a certain point just out of sight of the camera, and you can hear him shuffle his feet like he's not sure what to do or where to go, like he's looking around. And that's it. The whole thing is weird. He's walking. He seems to hesitate. He walks further. Then he's like confused. He stumbles off the curb. He turns around, comes back, walks up towards the cameras. And then you can hear him shuffling his feet like, where do I go from here? And never, the cameras are done. They run their 60 seconds. But then they never trigger again. None of the cameras. Where did he go? And we're kind of puzzled by this. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, man, this is weird. So then, it's like a couple weeks later or so, I'm in bed and I'm asleep. And the whole room, I'm like, who turned on the lights? And I open my eyes, and the room's lit up like low-level light, but I can see everything. And I'm looking, I'm going like, what's going on? I can see in the other room, it's dark. I can see windows, I can see sun's not up. I'm trying to figure out, did I sleep? What's going on? Where's this light coming from? I look to the window, and the curtains are orange because there's so much light hitting them that it's turning like a bright orange. And I'm like, at first, like, is there a fire? What the hell's going on? So I get up, I go over, and I pull the curtains and look through the blinds, and it's like daylight outside. But it's daylight for like 30 yards. So I look to the right, and it goes dark again. And I look out, and I'm seeing the tree, and I'm seeing one of the sheds, and I'm looking over, and I'm looking around going like, it's like daylight, and I'm looking kind of up. There's no light coming down. And here's the weirdest part. There's no shadow. There's no shadow from fences, the shed, under the tree. It's not from above. It's not from below. It's not from the side. There's just no shadow. And I kept looking at the tree going, why isn't there a shadow from the tree? Because I would be able to figure out which direction the light's coming from. It's like static light everywhere. And I'm just looking fascinated. And then I turned, and as I go to turn back, trying to decide what to do, it just dims like someone took a dimmer switch and just lowered it. Just went boom. So I go immediately out the back door, go out, because I figure someone's got to have a floodlight or something out there, something. I don't get this. I go out, I walk around, dogs come out again, they won't go down that one side of the yard. I'm looking around, there's nobody anywhere. I go out front, I've never heard any noise. I look around out front, I'm like, it can't be a helicopter, it can't be a drone. Drone lights, could they carry that much light? If it was that bright, would it be able to shine? If it was a drone flying, running light in? And so I just completely am puzzled. Of course, I lay there with my eyes open for the next hour or two because I'm waiting for light to come back and ET to get me, right? Because he's going to do some experiments on me. But I just get over it. And a couple days later, I'm talking to my neighbor, and I'm like, oh, I won't use his name. I should use his name, but I don't think he watches my videos. And I say, hey, the other night, did you see that bright light out back about 2, 3 in the morning? And he goes, yeah, what was that? He says, man, I woke up. He said, I literally pulled the covers over my head. It was still bright under the covers. And I finally had to take the pillow and put it over my head. And we talked. So it woke him up too. Weird thing is it didn't wake a lot of people up. It just, the two of us are the only people that woke up from the light. And he felt bad because he said, I wish I would have got up and looked to see what it is. Because I told him, I said, I never found any source. I went outside. There was nothing there. So those two incidents, very weird, and then there's always little weird things that happen, and you just say, you know. But then I go to check things, and I'm talking to Trevor, and then I look at my phone one day, and the videos I had of him walking up from our cameras just disappeared. I have videos before that and stuff after that, but for some reason, the couple videos I had were gone. And I was like, wouldn't have deleted them because I was trying to figure out, go out front, walk up, walk around, trying to figure out if I could manage to get out of the cameras. So then I asked the neighbor to send them back over, so we got some footage, proof of it happening. But then as this is happening, then I find out this story that these pyramids were pulled out of the ground. And I'm like, what could they be? And I went out to look at it, and then suddenly, one story, another story, and I suddenly realized I put that pyramid right on the back side of the electric panel. And I thought, this seems absolutely the most irrational, dumbest thing ever. But putting that pyramid by that thing that's what's caused all these weird things, because I've never had anything like that out there. And my neighbor actually said, you opened a portal. And I'm like, did I open a portal in the side of my house? So then I'm out there with the EMF meter. There's an electrical panel in the electrical line, so it's not going to do anything. But I'm like, but this makes no sense. This is stupid. This is Oak Island meets Skinwalker Ranch. This is absolutely dumb crap. But, of course, we go to do the video and talk about when I found the pyramid, and I don't want to talk about the stuff that's happened, because at the time I'm sitting there and going, I'm going to come up with an explanation. There was a static ball of lightning that fucking floated over my yard. So I move it in, and we do a little video, and then I set it down. Because I set it off to the side, I figure, well, I'm not going to put it back out there. There's nothing to my electrical panel and that in any circumstance. But I'll put it back over here. And then Trevor's told me ever since then, sometimes 5 to 10 times a day, the router and everything, the Wi-Fi just goes down. I put the pyramid right next to the router and the Wi-Fi. So we've had nothing but problems consistently since I put it in there. Now, today, I realize I'm finally have come to this solution of, I'm just going to move it again. I'm going to find some place that has no power whatsoever and see if just stupid crap stops. Because that's the only, I don't know how else to do it. Do I put it back by the fuse panel and then watch one of my neighbors disappear? So I don't know. I don't know what any of this means. And if you've hung in there this long, you see the video. Unfortunately, I ran out with the camera to get the pictures of it. There was light or something there or something, and there was nothing there. So I was ready to kind of capture something because I wanted to know what it was. But what is it? I mean, what is with this whole story and this stupid stuff? I don't believe in that crap, okay? I go out there and I check for it just to show people, yeah, absolute bull, okay? There's nothing there. You come out and you say this and all this and this energy, okay? I understand electricity. I understand how electricity works. I know how it can affect people psychologically. But there's nothing to any of this stuff. And I'm not going to get into a whole philosophical discussion on it. It's just, this stuff doesn't make any sense. Someone disappearing on my property and then daylight showing up in the middle of the night with casting no shadows and disappearing. And to this day still, I'll go walk around that side and the dogs will just stop. And I have to call them, and usually only Jacks will follow me up into there. But they used to go all the way up. They don't go all the way through anymore. They stop at a certain point and don't continue to that area. So did we bring something back that caused something to happen? And maybe this summer, that's one of the things we experiment on, is maybe I take that stupid pyramid and put it on top of the power box and see what happens. Maybe I take it out in the field and put it on a transformer and see what I can really create. But as stupid as it sounds, you kind of find your path leading there. For someone that's a non-believer, that's a total skeptic, to arrive at that conclusion, looking at something and saying that's the only thing that seems to be a common denominator here. So I hope everybody enjoyed this season and the 12 episodes we presented. We'll see where we're going to go, because I'm not sure just yet. And it'll depend on some of this stuff of how it plays out. Maybe someone comes up with a bunch of pictures, maybe something else, maybe something breaks loose. And maybe we keep everybody informed through Chasing Legends, and then everybody hears going into next fall kind of the direction we're going. Maybe it's something uniquely different, because there's some things coming to us that are kind of exciting that we're not going to talk about right now, but some exciting stuff that's actually kind of open up a lot more possibilities for places for us to go and places to research. So going with that, I want to thank everybody for coming out, joining us, going through this season, because I do appreciate it. Everyone appreciates it. We appreciate all the comments. We appreciate all the, all the best wishes and all the stuff, and telling us what a great job. I think everybody's done a good job, and I'm real happy this last year we got to kind of bring Deleel and Woody on camera during Chasing Legends. I was really happy that Frank and I were able to get out a bit more than we had been in the past. So I was really happy what we were able to do, and I hope everybody else is pretty happy with what we were able to accomplish this year. So that was season 5 in the books. We're done, and I don't have to sign off here because that's not what we do. But again, I will put it there, and you can put it in the comments. I mean, rationally, where do we go from here? Do we go back? Do we make one more last stab return? Do we put a fork in it? Or do we chase some other rainbow? We look for that other pot of gold somewhere. You let us know, because maybe that's what we follow. But as usual, you know, if you tell me what to do, I'm going to do the opposite, because that's just what I do. So thanks for joining us for the season. Thank you. We wish you well. And we look forward to seeing you again for season 6.